Hello, I'm Matthew Malcolm with American Vineyard Magazine, and I'm here with Jeff Bitter from Allied Grape Growers to give their monthly report on the current status of the California grape crop.
I'll give you an update on the statewide grape crush and how things are progressing this harvest, as 2016 is well underway. We're probably about halfway through harvest here in the Central Valley on wine grapes. We have started harvest in the North Coast quite a few weeks ago as well. Actually probably a month out from having picked our first Sauvignon Blanc in the North Coast. So most growers have been actively at harvest and planning for harvest now for the last 4 or 5 weeks. We actually started here in the valley the last week of July. We're anticipating a relatively early finish time based on the early start, and other than probably some late varieties like Ruby Red that could go well into October, we think most programs will be cleaned up by the second week of October here in the valley. And likewise in the North Coast, if the crop keeps progressing like it has, we'll probably see harvest completed by mid to late October up there as well. So hopefully we'll be able to avoid any of those fall rains that come along, usually around November, first part of November. So overall, with regard to crop size, we've seen fields picking out kind of all over the board. Some of them, it depends on maybe what the effect of the drought years had on the vineyards and their health, their overall health, and how vigorous they are growing now as a result of some of the damage that might occur during those dry years and the salts in the soils that weren't getting leached and those types of issues. And it could take a couple of years for some of those vineyards to bounce back. The stronger vineyards, particularly the younger ones that were planted in areas that have great soil and water, are doing well this year. Yields are good on those. So we're seeing kind of yields all over the board, but overall as an average, I'd say that we're looking at a crop that, if I had to characterize it, would still be below average on a statewide basis. Where average these days for the state would be around 4 million tons, maybe 4.1 million. We don't see too many people in the industry thinking it's going to be at that level. 4 million is kind of the highest number that you hear as you talk around with people observing the harvest and counting the tons as they come in. And what we are seeing, though, is in the North Coast and even the Central Coast, we're seeing crops that are a little bit bigger than we first anticipated. Some of them are sizing up well, even though we saw some shatter in some of the varieties early, and we thought that maybe they wouldn't get the size and weight that they normally get. But we're seeing those come in pretty well. A lot of the whites we picked in the North Coast were at estimate, some were even above. And we're just now starting to get into some of the early reds in the coast. So some Pinot Noir vineyards being picked now, some Zinfandel vineyards. So the jury's still kind of out on how the red grape crop will end up in the coastal areas. If we move into Lodi, we've moved through the whites for the most part. Still picking some Chardonnay up in Lodi. Sauvignon Blanc's done, Pinot Grigio's done. And we're really looking now at getting into Zin pretty heavily in Lodi, and some Merlot vineyards, and then we'll move on into Cab towards the end of Petit Syrah and some other later varieties. But overall up there, crop looks about where we estimated, which was average to slightly below. Chardonnay certainly picked out on the lighter side for most of the vineyards we handle up in the Lodi and the North Valley area. But again, with the exception of some of the newer and younger vineyards that were planted in recent years, those vineyards tended to do better overall than some of the older vineyards. And then finally moving into the valley, pretty much into red programs now. White Zins all done for the most part. Pinot Grigio's well over, Chardonnay's over, Muscat Canelli, all the early varieties have been in the barn now for a couple of weeks. And we're moving into Syrah and Merlot and some of the other early reds that we'll pick through most of this month and into October. So what we've seen down here again is probably lighter than average crop. Overall, our estimates have been at average or less, and that's where the vineyards are coming in, so no surprises there. I was telling a friend the other day that you can tell it's not a big crop when you don't have a lot of contract maxes being hit by growers with contracts. So very rare this season to see somebody rush up against the contract tonnage max on their contract. So that's kind of an indication it's not a large crop overall. As far as the Thompson crop, since we're talking about the Central Valley, it is lighter this year than last. In some cases, considerably lighter. We've seen it in what we've delivered to the wineries. We can also see it in what's being laid on the ground by continuous tray lay and also by hand-picked tray, where there's quite a bit of skips in the row. Looking down the row, you can see lots of areas where the row isn't covered with tray and grapes. So that's an indication to us that it's definitely on the lighter side as well. But quality looks great with regard to the Thompson crop and the potential to make very good raisins. So we might lose a little bit on the production side, but the dry down ratio might be pretty good, which could result in really nice quality, meaty, heavy raisins with good grades. So we're optimistic about that. But certainly for the raisin business, we do need to have a lighter crop to help with our inventory situation right now and to help work through that inventory that we have built up from the last couple of harvests. So overall, I'd say we're probably looking at an average or less crop, statewide. I think the trend's going to continue that we've talked about all year long, which is, and really for the last 2 or 3 years, which is people are drinking less lower end wines. They're moving up the price scale in the wine business. And so, areas like Lodi and the coast are going to benefit from that. And areas like the Central Valley are probably going to be disadvantaged in the marketplace because the growth and volume is not in those price categories. So I believe we're going to continue to see more pullouts over the winter time because pricing is such that most growers are going to look at it, and if they don't have a contract, they're going to say, well, it's a little bit too risky to farm these grapes without a contract. And I think a lot of growers are going to make a decision if they don't have a contract with minimum price support to possibly remove a vineyard, particularly those that aren't high producing. So we're going to see that trend continue, I believe, and seeing lower and lower acreage amounts in the valley and probably increasing acreage amounts in Lodi and the North Coast as the market continues to balance itself out.
Thank you, Jeff. Stay current on what's going on in your industry by reading American Vineyard Magazine and come to our annual expos for the State of the Industry addresses, including the Tree and Vine Expo on November 8th in Turlock, the Central Coast Grape Expo on November 11th at the Mid-State Fairgrounds, and the Grape Nut and Tree Fruit Expo in Fresno on November 16th. I'm Matthew Malcolm, CaliforniaAgNet.com.